we go.
Okay, and then I gotta figure out how to. I think. Hold on, just a second, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta hit the spotlight just a minute. Trying to turn off the button so I don't have to individually admit people. Hold on just a second. Disabled, people can join. Jim, I think you can start.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Judy, very much. And welcome to everybody to this second panel session that we're holding in this format, both for the current participants in the Iowa G2M Accelerator and for the broader Iowa startup community. Today, we've brought together a number of panelists who, even if physically associated with one of the universities in the state, provide support not only to university faculty, staff, students, and spinoffs, but also to the broader Iowa community. And the goal of today's session is to increase understanding across this community of these organizations. Many of the organizations are well known, although some are not. And even when the organization's well known, the full range of support that they provide may not be. So the approach that we're going to take today is, after I wrap up these brief introductory comments, I'll give a brief introduction of each of the panelists, and then they'll provide short overviews of their organizations, as well as in some cases their roles within the organization, what kind of services their organizations provide, clients, and so forth. We'll then open the floor and shift to more of a Q&A discussion format. We'd ask that the audience members submit questions or topics that you might like to hear more about using the Zoom chat function. John Callan, who is the G2M Accelerator resident, will then be facilitating the Q&A discussion portion of the session, and we'll be able to review, perhaps combine as appropriate, slightly reword for clarity, questions and so forth that come in, and he'll then pass them along to panelists who can answer questions, and then he can help facilitate discussion and so forth. Judy Isles has stepped in today for Hannah Kirkendall to help with some of the logistics, and we'll also be putting into the chat box some various links as well as email addresses of the panelists, so you can keep an eye open for those as well. So with that, let me introduce each of the panelists. First, Lynn Allendorf. Lynn is director of the Iowa John Papajohn Entrepreneurial Center. She's located at UI in Iowa City. The JPEC network, which includes locations at Iowa State University, UNI, Drake, and North Iowa area City, as well as Iowa City, is certainly a well-known institution in the state. But even with that, perhaps not everyone's aware of all the services they can provide. Lynn can speak to that both for her location and also for the work and support that all of the centers provide. Second, Brian Dalziel. Brian is Senior VP and Entrepreneur in Residence at Iowa Lakes Corridor Development Corporation, located in Spencer. Brian and the Iowa Lakes Corridor Development Corporation are probably among the lesser known of the organizations represented today. So I think this is a great opportunity for folks to learn more about that organization. Is managing principal at VentureNet Iowa, located in Des Moines, but working with companies, founders from across the state. Many participants will recognize VentureNet from the work they do associated with the state's innovation funding continuum. programs like the Proof of Commercial Relevance, Demo Fund, et cetera. But VentureNet also can provide services and assist folks beyond administration of that program. And I hope that Adrian will be able to speak today to all of that. Next, Paul Heath. Paul is Regional Director, University of Iowa SBDC in Iowa City. SBDC is another organization that I imagine essentially everyone participating today is familiar with, but between Paul and Ethan Pitt, who I'll introduce in a moment, everyone may not have a good feel for the full breadth of resources that the SBDCs can provide, both from their regional as well as state level programs. Next, Kurt Nelson. Kurt is President and CEO of the Entrepreneurial Development Center, typically referred to as EDC in organizations involved today, in addition to broad strategic consulting, connecting entrepreneurs, founders with others in the ecosystem. They also provide ongoing hands-on support to startups and founders in a variety of areas that, again, I'm sure Kurt will talk more about. Next, Ethan Pitt, Technology Client Advisor, America's SBDC Iowa. Ethan's located on the ISU campus, has a different sort of role than what Paul does or any of the regional SBDC leaders, in that he has a statewide focus, but provides support very specifically to high tech, not just tech as one would typically think about software and so forth, but high tech companies, and in a way that complements what the regional staff do. And then finally, Brian Tapp. Brian is Program Manager for Farm Food Enterprise Development with ISU Extension and Outreach. Brian's another resource that I would imagine many folks aren't familiar with, as he's not in a group like JPEC or SBDC, and we'll let him tell you more about that. So with that, I'm going to turn things over one by one in the same order that I just went through them to the panelists to talk a little bit more in depth about themselves, what their organizations do, and so forth. And we'll start off with Lynn Allendorf. Lynn.
Well, Jim, thank you for having me. As Jim said, I'm with the University of Iowa. I'll speak to some programs that we, just the University of Iowa sponsors, and then I'll mention some things that we do with the other 4 Papa John centers around the state. I think I know that some of you on the call are already into the go-to-market accelerator, and some of you are maybe looking at that long term. So one option for maybe the earlier stage companies on the call would be our Venture School program. This is a statewide 7-week training program based on the Business Model Canvas and the National Science Foundation's curriculum to really help startups vet their idea and take those first steps. It's really a great feeder, I would say, to a program to do before you go to some of the accelerators around the state. There's multiple accelerators that people on the call will be talking about today, and Venture School would be a great thing to do kind of as a first step before you go to one of those accelerators. Other programs that I think would be really helpful to everyone on the call is we have a business consulting program where we take on 50 or so projects a year from startups around the state. And then we pair undergraduate and graduate student teams to complete projects for those startups. And that's completely free. It's I think a super helpful way to get some free help, maybe some market research, some industry analysis. And we staff those classes with double the number of normal faculty. So we're able to really have the faculty make sure that the projects are quality and that the entrepreneurs get the help they deserve and need. Another program would be our internship program. We fund mainly a summer internship program the way it would be different than the standard internship program is we only take on small businesses and startups as clients. So it's really a way for University of Iowa students, regardless of their major, to check out what it would be like to work for a startup. And we know that startups have limited funds, so we pay 50% of that internship. We ask that the startup pays half and we pay half. Feel free to contact me, check it out on our website. We'd be taking applications for that starting in, late winter, early spring for the summer semester. And then the business consulting project program, we take each semester, fall, spring, and summer, we take on projects. So, just apply, ahead of that semester. Now I want to talk about some of the programs we offer jointly with the other 4 Papa John centers. And I'm sure I'll miss something. So when one of the other centers gets on, they can mention that as well. Number 1 is we offer like business plan competitions, and we give away award about $100,000 in seed funding through that main competition that we sponsor with the other 4 centers, and it's also sponsored by the Iowa Department of Economic Development as well. And many people that are on the call today are judges in that competition. So it's I think first place, it's in the $35,000 range. I'm probably misspeaking, but it's a great way to get some early seed funding. If you're a startup, thank you, 40,000. It's even better than I said it was. And so, yeah, check that out. We also offer a student competition. Most of you wouldn't qualify for that, but we jointly sponsor a student competition with the other 4 centers. Both are obviously sponsored by John Papa John. Another thing we do jointly is help Wellmark, the insurance company, manage a early stage seed funding. And each of the 5 centers does the due diligence and gets packets together, and then suggests whether these startups are funded with this. It's a convertible note. It's a loan that can convert to a investment, $100,000 on the first round. And Paul Heath, who's on, will mention how to go about applying for that. And we really just split the state up in 5 chunks and refer you to the closest Papa John Center for getting that application together. And then the other thing I'll just hint at is the 5 Papa John centers have been trained by MIT this summer to put together a new mentoring program. And we'll be announcing that officially with more details late September-ish. So watch for more details on that. It'll be a really good way for growth companies and early stage companies to get mentoring support from quality mentors throughout the state of Iowa, as well as mentors that are connected to the universities that might not be in the state of Iowa, but have some industry expertise that startups might need. So I think that's everything. And I think we're doing Q&A later. So happy to keep an eye on the chat for questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Lynn.
Yep.
Shift over to opposite part of the state, and Brian Dalziel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Jim. I'm Brian Dalziel, and I'm entrepreneur in residence and senior vice president of Iowa Lakes Corridor Development Corporation. And we have been involved in supporting entrepreneurs for over 20 years here in Northwest Iowa. I've been with the corridor for 11 years now. During that time, we've developed programs that go from youth entrepreneurship all the way through retiring business succession opportunities. And so we have over 70 JA programs running throughout the 4-county region. We support Buena Vista, Clay, Dickinson, and Emmett counties along the Highway 71 corridor in Northwest Iowa. And then we have entrepreneurship programs for middle school students and high school students. High school students can take a capstone program that I help facilitate in partnership with an accredited teacher, where they spend half days their entire spring semester developing a business plan, executing. A bunch of these students that have graduated have hit their revenue bars and are paying for college with revenues thrown off by their startups. And that's something that the students, and particularly their parents, are very fond of. For college students, we have the Okoboji Entrepreneurial Institute, the University of Iowa, Iowa State, University of Northern Iowa, and Buena Vista University come together along with Iowa Lakes Community College for a week-long residence program that's coming up here in August. They stay with host families around the Lakes area and go through a very rigorous academic program. And there's a tremendous amount of networking. Our launch event on Sunday will have 250 people converging on the area for the students to network with. They meet investors. We've had millions of dollars invested from local angel investors into student-owned businesses. And so we're very proud of that program. And we've now had students come back to the Lakes area and buy businesses through our succession program and are now operating them. And so we're super happy about that. For adult entrepreneurs, we have Prepare to Launch, which is a 10-week program that takes people through building their leadership team, all the customer discovery and the normal things that you would expect for that to have. It's a custom developed curriculum that we wrote that utilizes case studies. We call them adventures and misadventures of local entrepreneurs. People identify with, oh, wow, Stacy did that. Well, he's not that special. If he can do it, I can do it. That sort of thing. And it's really helpful for them to connect with other local entrepreneurs who come in and tell their story, what went well, what didn't go well. Like I say, it's adventures and misadventures. Sometimes things go and sometimes things blow, and they learn from both the successes and the failures. And we don't hide the failures. It's a lot of tuition paid, and we want people to learn from those and carry that on to their next startup. We have a Match, Learn, Launch program. We received a grant from Google, and in partnership with Buena Vista University and Storm Lake, we developed Match, Learn, Launch, where we identify businesses that are interested in selling because they're approaching retirement. We match them up with, in a lot of cases, young folks that are interested in taking that business over. There's a learn that we identify what the skill gaps are, and Buena Vista University upskills them in those areas. There's a lot of hands-on, business training that the corridor does as well associated with that. And so Match, Learn, Launch is a fairly new program that we've been doing in partnership with BBU that we're looking forward to growing over time. We received a grant from the Iowa Economic Development Authority. A big shout out to them. Thanks for their support for $150 grand to take our Prepare to Launch curriculum and port that over to digital video format. We created a studio, a shoot studio in Spencer Co-working up in the attic there. So we call it the Entrepreneur's Attic. And so we've got lights and cameras and all that junk set up there. And so we're capturing videos, interviewing local entrepreneurs, and implementing the curriculum of Prepare to Launch in an online format called Startup Skill Up. And so people will be able to register, they can do their customer discovery, they can record all of that in a database format in a web portal and share that with their mentors. We've recruited a 549 individual mentor network with expertise from all across the state and across many, many different subject areas. And those mentors provide support to the entrepreneurs very effectively. And so, from beginning to end in their entrepreneurial journey, we've got programming that helps and supports them. So, and one of the things I will mention, Startup Skill Up is being recorded in both English and Spanish. So Carlos Araujo with Latino IQ is an Okoboji Entrepreneurial Institute graduate. He owns Latino IQ, is fluent in Spanish, and not only in the language, but in the culture. And so we're making sure that when we launch Startup Skill Up in Spanish, that it supports Latino customs, Latino culture, is sensitive to the area, to the issues that community is sensitive about. And there's a strong immigrant community in the state of Iowa, and immigrants start businesses more than traditional Americans do. That's an underserved community right now, and we're working hard to address that. Also, we have an angel network and an angel fund. So we have Iowa Lakes Capital, which is an angel fund, and Iowa Lakes Corridor Angels, which is an angel network. We have both accredited and non-accredited investors participating in the angel network. And over the last 11 years, we've raised $14.9 million on behalf of the 111 startups that we've helped launch off. 269 clients have received support during that 11-year period. So.
Great. Thank you very much, Brian. Sure we'll be returning to you. Let's shift over to Adrian.
Thanks, Jim. I am Adrian Greenwald, Managing Principal of VentureNet Iowa, and VentureNet primarily administers the state of Iowa's public innovation funds, which are a series of low interest loan programs for Iowa-based small businesses that are commercializing proprietary technology in the IT, bioscience, and advanced manufacturing sectors. These programs range in scale from 25,000 at the very early proof of commercial relevance end up to 500,000 for still fairly early stage companies, but those that are slightly more established. We have developed a review panel process that is unique to what we do with these programs, that essentially uses a standard set of evaluation criteria that was developed by my predecessor, John LaMarche, to essentially allow companies to experience, what an investor, like they're doing primarily. It's an investor pitch, which is somewhat different from your typical sales pitch. And for companies at the very early stage of the continuum, which is where we see the most activity, this is their first time dipping a toe into the world of fundraising. So it really is an educational, there's an educational component to what we do, so that they're learning the types of questions that an investor is going to ask and how they need to be prepared to answer those questions. And it's okay if they don't know the answer to everything at that stage, because oftentimes you've got some hypotheses that you're testing and you're still trying to figure out what exactly the market wants and how you position and pitch yourself. So it's okay to say, I don't know, I'm working on that. But what we do is we engage a lot of the faces that I'm seeing on my screen right now to act as panelists. So what we do is we organize a 2-hour review panel meeting for each company that is applying to the innovation funds. We select a group of panelists that are unique to each applicant company. The applicant company gives a presentation, there's a Q&A, we go through the evaluation. That evaluation then becomes a supplemental piece of the application, which then goes on to the Technology Commercialization Committee. That is a subcommittee of the Iowa Economic Development Authority Board. That is the committee that is tasked with the fiduciary responsibility to say yes or no to anyone that applies to the programs that VentureNet administers. If those companies are recommended for funding, that then goes on to the full Iowa Economic Development Authority Board, where those recommendations generally 99.9% of the time are approved. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's basically what we do. We're also actively engaged and involved with a lot of the accelerators and various entrepreneurial programs throughout the state. So whenever they need somebody to Zoom in, or I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do things in person here relatively soon. We often participate in various events around the state, act as judges for various pitch competitions and business plan competitions. Sometimes we get tapped to do a little bit of mentoring or provide whatever assistance or expertise we can to startups that are building their business in the state of Iowa.
Great. Thank you very much, Adrian. Let's shift over then. Paul Heath.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Heath with the University of Iowa Small Business Development Center. And this particular office is part of 15 centers across the state. My office primarily serves 5 counties: Johnson, Washington, Iowa, Cedar, and Poweshiek County. but the centers around the state don't particularly pay close attention to their boundaries. If one center can be of more assistance to a company than the closest center because of some expertise or because of some networking opportunity where we will cross paths with each other. My office is located at the BioVenture Center. The BioVenture Center is on the University of Iowa Research Park. And the BioVenture Center is a life science incubator. Here we have companies that are looking into therapeutics, stem cell research, nuclear medicine, nanoparticles, diagnostics, as well as we do have some software companies out here. Most of those are related to medicine. So the SBDC's target marketing is toward, in my case, staff at the University of Iowa, faculty and students, as well as community entrepreneurs. We work with people that are thinking of starting a business, as well as existing small business owners and managers. So how this office markets is not probably true of all the SBDCs around the state. It's kind of marketing is based on our reputation and word of mouth. So I get a lot of referrals from past clients, bankers, legislators, both federal and state, as well as CPAs and attorneys. So what kind of support do we provide? Well, we talk about the feasibility of their idea. You know, I work closely with the John Papajohn Entrepreneurial Center. That's a very good relationship, and the Tippie College of Business. And through Venture School, you know, they look at the business model canvas and do a lot of customer discovery. Also help a lot of businesses with financing. We look at loans, equity possibilities, SBIR, and Wellmark, as Lynn mentioned. So I kind of coordinate the Wellmark for Southeast Iowa. That's a $100,000 convertible note. The entrepreneur does not have to sign personally for the money, just as an officer of their corporation. And the principal payment is not due until the end of year 5, and that can be extended for 2 years. Interest is due yearly, however, once a year. And Wellmark has the ability to convert their note to equity in case there is an equity event by the company. And Wellmark likes scalable businesses. You know, businesses that might have IP, but that's not strictly enforced by any means. We also, you know, teach entrepreneurs how to network. They can't do it all by themselves. Look at benchmarking, market research. You know, the business school has a very good library here with a lot of databases that we have access to. And the SBDC also has an individual that works jointly with the SBDC and with the Iowa Department of Revenue, so it can help small businesses with their understand their tax responsibilities. And here in Iowa City, I work with 1 Million Cups. 1 Million Cups is a Kauffman Foundation nationwide program where businesses can pitch their ideas every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. here in Iowa City. It's done at the Iowa City Area Development Corporation, but there's 1 Million Cups in Des Moines. I think there's 1 Million Cups in Waterloo. There's several 1 Million Cups across the state. And with Zoom, you can tune into 1 Million Cups in San Francisco if you want to. So how we get involved with existing businesses, you know, we try to become problem solvers. We will help them with their cash flow, help them develop key performance indicators, you know, look at sales per hour in the case of retail, repeat business ratios, that type of thing, help them with their strategy going forward. And you know, again, part of a network of SBDCs, part of the John Papajohn Entrepreneurial Center, and we are glad to assist Iowa entrepreneurs. And if I left anything else out, I'll let Ethan fill in the gaps. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Kurt Nelson.
I'm here. So Kurt Nelson, I'm the founder and president and CEO of the Entrepreneurial Development Center, and also the founder and manager of two early stage seed funds, which are now both fully invested, Iowa Seed Fund 1 and 2, and I'm the co-founder and the current president of the Iowa Venture Capital Association. EDC is a 18-year-old not-for-profit organization. It was founded by me in right around August, September of 2003, when I had exited Crystal Group, which a company I was running, which was a very successful tech startup that we built here in Iowa. And the mission of this organization is really to help create and grow high impact interstate commerce businesses in Iowa, the kind of businesses that attract money and people from other states to our state. We work statewide. We work with startups as well as existing businesses. Over 18 years and a little more than 1,200 businesses. I'd say 70% of those businesses are businesses that have been in business 5 years or up to 80 years, but 30% of them are startups. We have a team of 5 full-time people plus about 50 subject matter experts that we've curated over time. Everyone has extensive real-world business experience. Everyone on our organization here has been involved with us for 12 years or more, so we have pretty significant experience assisting entrepreneurs as well at this point. We have a proven methodology for client engagement. So we have a specific business report card process that we use to assess each business model and opportunity. We assess the leadership teams through the Caliper Personal Profile company to really get an understanding of both the team and the opportunity. And then we build with the team a plan to help the business reach milestones. And we establish milestones for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year. That average engagement for us is well over 5 years with any individual company. We have some that have been with us since like client 2 18 years ago. They're a 20-some million dollar a year company. They were an idea then, but they keep going through new gates and they keep needing some assistance. So we provide, like a lot of the organizations, we provide basic mentoring, coaching, consulting, whatever you want to call it. We do an awful lot of connecting to vetted resources, and we do a lot of connecting of entrepreneurs to entrepreneurs when we believe they can be helpful to each other. But most unique, and I think what makes us different than a lot, is that we engage as fractional employees in a lot of these companies to accelerate the success of that business. I learned early on when I was doing this is that, well, this is what you need to do next. And the entrepreneur would look at me and say, well, but you already know how to do it. Can't you just do it? Or can't you help me do it? And, we found out that, yes, we can. And the more we get involved, the faster the deal moves, the faster the business can grow, the less mistakes that get made. So, and I'll give you examples, so for fractional CEO leadership, when we have a pharmaceutical company out of Iowa that is getting out into the marketplace. We helped them raise almost $20 million last year. And that was a business that, as it was coming out of the academic space, that needed fractional CEO leadership to really help build out a business plan and a financial plan, able to go out and attract street dollars, private money. So I played that role. I'm still the chairman of their board, right? When it comes to accounting, we learned if entrepreneurs don't do their accounting right, it's hard to get any kind of money. And I really understand their business. So we'll actually, right now we're doing the QuickBooks accounting for six different of our clients. On the marketing side, from Marcom to market research to branding to packaging, we've got all kinds of examples where we've stepped in and actually just helped them do, from naming the product to finding the right branding firms to coming up with in packaging firms and all of that. So there have been multiple examples of that. Sales leadership, I have a number of times, because sales training is one of my extensive backgrounds, taken over sales organizations for anywhere from 3 months to 18 months, and really actually just put our hands on it and built out a sales team and then found them a sales leader and turned it over. On the operations side, we can step in and help run a business from manufacturing, purchasing, supply chain management, and all of that. So we work with around 100 businesses annually. That's about how many we touch a year. Typically, we have between 30 and 35 of what I would consider to be reoccurring active accounts, which is people that are coming and we're talking to them every week or every other week. Like I said, we've worked with over 1,200 businesses in Iowa now. We've helped those businesses raise over $750 million in capital and add up over $2.3 billion in revenue growth to the state. So for more information, you can go to our website, edcinc.org. And if you're interested in engaging, there's a client application form on that site. And I'll stop.
Thank you very much, Kurt. Ethan Pitt, let's shift over to you.
All right. Paul covered things pretty well for the SBDC, so I'll try to add as much as I can here. My name is Ethan, and I'm the Technology and Innovation Client Advisor for the SBDC Iowa. I am headquartered out of Iowa State University. I could probably throw a spitball or something over at Judy or Peter, so I'm pretty close to both of those folks and love working with ISU in any capacity. But yeah, Paul covered things pretty well. I think I just want to add a couple different things that are maybe unique to my position. I do focus on technology startups. So however you want to define technology or innovation, it's totally up to you, I suppose. But I do provide additional assistance across the state for folks that have new ideas, new concepts at really any stage. I typically focus on more rural areas. One thing that I noticed pretty quickly is that the state of Iowa, as you can see from this call, is very well connected, and there are a lot of very good resources for entrepreneurs, especially in more of the urban areas. So in an attempt to also extend those resources and connect those folks to people in rural areas, I think is what I really try to focus on, whether it's connecting somebody to venture school at U of I or connecting somebody to Startup Factory, or with Adrian, for POCR, things like that. I was raised in rural Iowa, so I know how disconnected sometimes, at least I was, from what's happening either in Des Moines or Council Bluffs or Iowa City or Cedar Rapids, things like that. So that's really where I focus. One thing that I want to really articulate in the discussions I have with entrepreneurs is that, entrepreneurship can be a really lonely thing sometimes, or it feels that way. So as an SBDC person, from, I think, speaking on behalf of Paul and myself, we want to make sure that we're here to help you fight some of those battles behind the scenes, especially when you have a new idea that you're looking at commercializing. That can be really hard and very intimidating, especially because it's something that you can get some negative feedback from right away too. If you're trying to change the world with something that doesn't exist yet, you're going to get a lot of people that are going to look at you and think you're crazy. And maybe some of you who are on the call know that firsthand. But, myself and Paul and a lot of others on the call, I think, are really here to help you feel comfortable in your space, explore different things, do a lot of customer discovery, and believe in what you have and to fight that fight. So again, we're here on your team behind the scenes, and we're here to help you connect to other resources in the state. A lot of times what we do is active listen to your concepts and try to give as much feedback as we possibly can, and help you on your adventure, on your entrepreneurial journey. But we do, as Paul mentioned, we can provide some technical assistance as well, whether you're applying for certain things throughout the state, different opportunities, different loan options through banks or revolving loan funds, or whether you're looking for some startup capital too. I mean, we can go through pitch decks and a variety of different modules that might be able to assist you think of these things as you prepare for questions from investors and from bankers, things along those lines. I also, we started a new program with the SBDC as well this summer called Rural Business Innovators, which is very similar to Venture School, Startup Factory, other accelerators in the state. We kind of looked at all of these really successful programs and said, oh, what if we, borrowed some of those modules and concepts, but tried to really focus on people in rural areas again, entrepreneurs, innovators in rural parts of the state, and provide some of that similar programming to them, and then to help those folks get connected to what's happening in more populated areas of the state. So it's called Rural Business Innovators. We have a cohort of 9 this summer, and we're going to start another cohort of 4 or 5 coming into the fall. But it is focused on really SBDC bread and butter, which is sort of this one-on-one confidential counseling type of a scenario, and then connecting those folks to other people like a lot of the folks on the call to help them in their entrepreneurial journey. So I think that's probably good enough for me. I just appreciate being here. So thanks for allowing me to join you guys.
Great, thanks, Ethan. And last, but certainly not least, Brian Tapp.
Thanks, Jim. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, just making sure. I'll just go through real briefly. We do a lot of applied work and technical assistance for businesses, and I'm just going to go through a couple thoughts and maybe some just some basic market general analysis of some different things. Again, I'm Brian Tapp. I'm with Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. I work in a program called Farm, Food, and Enterprise Development. It's kind of a unique thing. We previously were value-added agriculture, so we did a lot more feasibility study work and technology stuff, starting back in the early 2000s with a lot of ethanol and ag tech projects. However, we've expanded into quite a few other fields with that. So just kind of go through a little bit with that. We do a lot of partnerships, connectivity, as Ethan was talking about. We kind of do the same thing across campuses or across partners that we've worked with before. Working with Paul Heath before on some stuff with some feasibility work over in the Grinnell area as well. So just kind of with that. My background is real quickly is I've been in managed revolving loan funds, microloans. I've also been an SBA loan officer and really worked on entrepreneurship assessments and ecosystem development in previous university work, and to really try to identify that. So I kind of have that background. I think one of the things I like to bring to the table for any client is the other side of the desk from being a loan officer, just looking at that and making sure that, hey, there's a reason they're asking you for X, Y, and Z, or some venture fund is asking you for X, Y, and Z specifically, and get down to nuts and bolts. We work with different types of projects. What's kind of funny is we'll work with anything from funeral homes, which has been crazy for us. Learned a lot about that. And as far as, I think that was a project with Paul actually, and then all the way to like massive meat processing. We're looking at protein supply chains right now. Technology will transfer that over to who may need to work on something specific with that. And then like this direct meat protein marketing, we've been working a lot on that side. We do a ton of hotel projects across the state as well. So we're really looking at that. And I'll get a little more detail of why we do what we do and what we feel our niche is and our expertise may be with that. So we do 3 things. We do feasibility studies, which we'll do a full-fledged. So if somebody's looking at a loan guarantee through SBA or USDA, and then the bank or the community, or in some cases it may be a venture funds looking for a feasibility study, we'll conduct that with a 55-step process that we look at to identify it. We really do a lot of dig. Typically the project takes about 250 to 280 hours for a review. We process that, put that together with the report back to whoever the entity is. So we do a lot of those projects. Again, they take some time, but really what we're trying to do is we don't say yes or no fund the project. We're just making sure that somebody who has worked with somebody previous to us may have really put something solid together. And I think Kurt Nelson said this earlier about the financials, where I think you said, Kurt, you're doing like 8, maybe 6 to 8 companies right now, helping them with QuickBooks. I mean, that's so important for that financial side. So again, from being a previous loan officer to doing these feasibility studies to looking at things, staying on top of the financials is so important, because that's what people are going to be looking at. They may trust your market analysis, they may, let's say, whatever, but again, looking at those financials are paramount with that. We also do another project called the feasibility snapshot, which will do 40 to 50 hours of financial review. We do a lot of this for somebody who's looking to scale, or someone who's looking for another set of eyes to look at things. We've done these for large construction companies in Iowa that are looking to expand. We've done them for again, protein processors. Somebody's looking at another location for something. But again, what we're really trying to do is dig into that to make sure that financially they're structured for that expansion or that growth possibility with that. So again, those are feasibility snapshots. Again, I said, I think they take us typically from 40 to 50 hours for our review on those. The other thing too is there's been talked a lot about market analysis. We do a lot of those market analysis. We do partner with on some of our projects. I would say more than 50% of our projects now, we're going to be partnering with SciBiz Lab at the Papa John Center there at Iowa State University. A great resource for us too to do some survey work. They're fantastic to work with grad students and undergrads. I know Iowa has the same type of program with that too. So wherever you're at, whatever you're looking for, we do have some specialties that we look at. Again, you heard me say I don't talk a lot about agriculture, ag technology. We've got a lot of those people on campus that take care of that. But we're really trying to get into the numbers and data sets behind the scenes. So we look at it from an economic perspective. That's my background in econ, is really looking at it from a micro level, an intermediate level, and then also a macro level perspective on what's going on in those market analysis with that. So we also do we do quite a bit on the break-even analysis as well. One other thing that we just recently started doing was one of my key team members is certified in business valuations now. So he's been conducting, he's on his third one right now since this spring. So he's certified, went through the entire process. And so we're providing that not to compete, but just if somebody needs somebody to get it done in a fairly short time frame. We've been working on those. Again, going through the entire BCA process. Our resources that we use, we do, we're doing financials. We look at 3 different data sets, financial data sets for benchmarking. You'll probably hear that a lot, but I'm a big believer in looking at those. So we have 3 different sets with that. We also pulled together some amazing resources through the ISU Parks Library for other market data, and do some deep dives on information for clients with that. I'm a big believer, and I know just in the structure with business planning, I do a lot of work with live planning and a lot of instruction with that. I've been using it since 2013. I know SBDC Iowa has licenses for that as well, and I know other folks have been using it. I'm a big believer in a live plan. Some folks may say, well, it's a little too complicated or whatever. But the key thing for me is those people who are not financial to walk through, not a spreadsheet, but walking through step by step of how to put that financial projections together. I think it's a fantastic tool, regardless of the rest of it. If clients would use that, I think it's a really good tool. We also have a couple ag things. I mean, if you wanted to know, I can tell you right now, an average beehive produces 50 pounds of honey per year, first year non-productive. I mean, I learned all kinds of stuff that I never thought I would know by working through a lot of this, some of the ag market analysis that we do as well. But again, if we don't know, we try to find out and find the right people like Ethan and Paul previously mentioned with. We do also a little bit of work with Esri through here at Iowa State. And then also we use MZ, labor market analysis. And then we have some BizCom stuff with that. So again, just a resource if you needed some technical assistance, you're looking to engage with us. Again, my information, I think Judy put that on there. It's btap@iastate.edu with that. So that's pretty much what I have. And thanks,
Great.
Jim.
Okay, thanks, Brian. And just to echo, as Brian did, comment that Brian made, Kurt also commented on this. It's always important to really appreciate what you do know and what you don't know. And when you look at the typical founder of a high-tech, research-driven startup, such as the kind that we're typically working with, the finance piece is generally not on the side of the ledger that's things you do know. So understanding that there are folks out there that can help you think through things strategically, as well as the straight accounting aspect is very important. So with that, let me turn things over to John, who will kind of facilitate the remainder of this session.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks to all the panelists. I think the overriding theme, just hearing from everyone, is all the tremendous resources we have in the state of Iowa, and we're really blessed to have all these different programs and resources. To start off, and everyone out there in cyberspace, if you can direct any questions on the chat box function. But if I would like each of the panelists to chime in on specific programs available for women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses, whether they're specific tailored funding programs, grant funding programs. I know there's the Iowa Center that was working with some women-owned businesses. If we could give some talk or time to discuss some of the resources available for WBEs and MBEs. It's open to anyone. Anyone can weigh in.
In Northwest Iowa, we have a women entrepreneur network that paused due to COVID, but I'm looking forward to them cranking that back up again. Jill Harms with Blink Marketing, CEO of a local communications company, is the tip of the spear of that program, and they've been actively engaged for a long time. And then we're through our Startup Skill Up initiative, we're supporting the Latino community with Spanish language programming, both the digital videos as well as building a mentor network of bilingual speakers that can support those folks.
Yeah, you know, John, I'm not aware of any specific programs, but I've been in this space long enough to know that if you look across the organizations that you see on here, I don't think there are any organizations that aren't helping virtually everyone that has a good idea, regardless.
There's also the, go ahead, Adrian. You're good.
I'll add, so the innovation funds aren't, you know, there's nothing specifically for women, minority, or veteran-owned business, but we're always actively seeking a diverse group of applicants as well as people participating as panelists. So that's something that we definitely, you know, try to get women and people of just, you know, all colors and persuasions around the table to look at the opportunity from, you know, various perspectives. So that's something that we definitely try to do. I will say that IEDA has the TSB program, Targeted Small Business, which is a series of, so there are loan programs that are specifically for women, minority, or veteran-owned small business. I think I saw Jill Lippinclatt's name somewhere on the screen earlier. She would be a good person to speak to those particular programs.
That's what I was going to mention too, Adrian, was the Targeted Small Business Program. So I know probably Paul and I have worked with folks and directed folks that way as well. And that seems to be a pretty good program that could open the doors in a variety of different ways, including some low interest loan funds as well. So.
In Iowa City, pre-COVID, we partnered with the Iowa City Area Development Group, the economic development arm of the city and the region, and we would offer panels for women entrepreneurs and people interested to come in and listen to those panelists. We're scheduling those again for this fall, so very excited to be getting going on those again.
Hey folks, I just wanted to make a quick note too. My name is Ryan Bratvold. I'm actually a city ambassador for Bunker Labs Des Moines, which is a program that helps specifically the military connected community to gain resources and connections and education to help them with their small business or their startup. And so I'm in Des Moines. I also work for Brown & Winnick Law Firm, but myself and one other gentleman, we're actively working to connect with Iowa veterans and military spouses to help them in their entrepreneurial journey.
Thanks, Ryan. Ryan, if you could maybe provide a link to Bunker Labs and I can share it in the chat box.
You bet.
Thanks. Great. So I know, Lynn, you had mentioned an internship program, you know, that you personally administer there at University of Iowa. Are there, and again, this is directed to all the panelists, other job training, workforce development funding programs available in the state. I know there's some programs through some of the local community colleges, the 260E and the WTED. If folks could touch upon that or those programs.
So it looks like we don't have anyone on the call that's an expert in the community college training program. Is that fair to say? They
I
have
can touch
one
on it.
and it's
We've run some-
awesome.
Hey, Lynn. Yeah, we partner with Iowa Lakes Community College and Iowa Central Community College on some 260E projects. It's a really great program where an individual company identifies, they fill out a preliminary agreement with the community college and it baselines the current level of employment. So then all the new hires get added into a bucket. For each of those new hires, based on what their salary level is, there's a dollar amount that gets allocated. The community college once or twice a year sells bonds to the general public, and those bonds then fund job training. The bonds are repaid through revenue redirection. So a portion of the person's payroll tax gets redirected from the state treasury to the community colleges to pay back those programs. So to the entrepreneur, it's free money, and there's not a lot of that laying around anymore. And so it's a coveted program. They can typically receive anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 per position. That's a part of that hiring process, and the community colleges like it because they scrape a pretty good admin fee off the top of that, which they earn and deserve because it's there's a lot for them to do to properly administrate that program. For the training itself, 50% up to 50% of that training can be on the job training informal instruction, if you will. The other 50% has to be formal instruction that can either be provided by the community college through their staff and resources, or it can be provided by the company itself. They can have their own staff persons or consultants that they hire, but it has to be formalized classroom instruction where you have dates, times, who was in attendance and what the curriculum was and all of that. There's some, documentation that you have to pay attention to, but it's very straightforward and easy to do. And like I said, we've used those programs and strongly encourage the 260E and the 260F. F is for the existing businesses with existing employees. E is for the new hires.
But the one thing to remember is it's not free. If you don't create the jobs and you don't do the training, you still are on the hook for the entire fee to the community college.
Yeah, excellent point, Kurt. You do personally, the CEO does personally guarantee that. And so it's free money if you do those hires. If you don't, because they're going to go off and they're going to borrow the money, and create those resources, and that money has to get paid back. The community colleges have some discretion. If the money wasn't spent because you didn't do the hires, you sometimes don't have, they still have some of that money, but you're on the hook for some of the legal costs and so forth associated with, unwinding that thing. Yeah. And so that excellent point, Kurt. Thanks.
At NIAC, we have a business and industry group that handles the 260E and 260F also. And I think a lot of people aren't aware that the focus on manufacturing 4.0, industry 4.0, those 260E, 260F funds can be used not only to train new employees in what you're currently doing, but to train in new technologies in manufacturing purchases that you're making that would be considered manufacturing 4.0. So as people are looking at the manufacturing 4.0 technology grants, they can actually access some of those funds to train their employees on the new technology as well.
Great. Thank you, Brian, Candy, and Kurt for that great information. We'll be sure to share a resource to contact panelists, attendees to some of those programs administered through the community colleges. Next question. Obviously, we have a great ecosystem here in Iowa, and kudos to everyone on this call, particularly the panelists, for all the great resources and services they provide. Let's look a little critically, though. If direct this to all the panelists, what are some identified gaps in our Iowa entrepreneurial support ecosystem, and how do you think we can overcome some of those challenges?
One particular gap that I've come across recently, especially with tech startups, and I'm glad folks like Kurt are on the call, is actually getting seed funding or venture capital or startup funding of any kind. And I know, things like Venture School can help provide a small amount of that as well. So there are some good resources out there, but I think the real gap is for maybe minority startups as opposed to anything else. And so I do know that there's a movement right now, at least in Des Moines, to address that question. I don't know if it's spearheaded by the West Des Moines Chamber or who's looking at it, but potentially developing some type of investment funding pool that will be focused on minority-owned either tech startups or startups in general. So I guess what I'm really saying is seed funding is always, we're not Silicon Valley here in Iowa, but there's a lot of creative and innovative people. So that always seems to be one of the gaps we need to continue to focus on and address.
Yeah, I think that early stage funding, that real high risk funding, it's very difficult for a lot of these entrepreneurs to secure. I think it's been a continuing problem. Once you can prove something, you've got investment funds that would like to jump on board, but that very early stage, both the investment funds I raised and deployed, were all seed stage funds. And it's a tough environment because you can make 17 to 20 investments in seed stage opportunities across Iowa, and I've done it over about 16 years. And I'm not sure. I don't think either fund will actually make a profit, right? And that's with a lot of vetting, and that's turning a lot of deals down. So that real early stage dollar is very difficult money to get and keep getting.
Yeah, I'm so thankful for proof of commercial relevance and those types of programs, because they can at least step in and assist at least in that early stage, but that can only go so far too, so we have to continue to figure out how to, leverage those dollars that the state helps and provides for us.
I would say that another gap is we're a relatively small state, and so we've got a fairly shallow mentor pool. A lot of the people that have relevant expertise and experience starting and scaling and then exiting a successful, particularly tech business, they're few and far between here. So it's getting a little bit better, but I think we really, and I'm hopeful that, maybe the training that Lynn touched on, that we'll have a deeper pool of mentors who have time and availability to share their experience and their knowledge with, new founders and startups, so that they aren't wasting valuable time making mistakes, that other people have made, so that they can say, look, I did this, do not do it.
Well, and Adrian, it's not just, mentors, it's, that senior leadership team as companies are growing and trying to build out that team. There's often a lack of available talent. I mean, the unemployment rate in Iowa has been a real challenge, and that's no different at the kind of the high end of the spectrum either. I think the other challenge, particularly for like spinouts from the University of Iowa, is the sheer amount of money that would be needed to take like a therapeutic to market. There's just no possible way that money is going to be here in Iowa, given the population of 3 million people. So a lot of the medical type startups will have to be sold out of state eventually, and that's sad, but it's the reality.
Yeah, they'll all, if it's, I've spoken on this a couple times, but if it's venture funded, it's going to get sold. It's going to
Yeah.
get sold. You know, Pear Deck is the perfect example, right? Iowa City. Well, probably one of the most successful exits, if not the most successful I've seen in the 18 years I've been doing this, right? And we were integrally involved in that company from the very start, right? And it was creating jobs. Now it's created a lot of wealth based on the exit value, right? But the business left the state, right? And so if we venture fund them, they will sell. And because that's what the venture capital firm needs, they need to turn them in 5 to 7 years. And so if they're going to turn them in 5 to 7 years, they're gone. So you're not going to build long-term stable operations of a business here if you venture fund it early on.
That's one of the reasons that our region focuses very heavily on, angel investors and local investors trying to make those businesses sticky so that they can stay, so that even when they exit, Bruce Damasio, who was very heavily involved in the Iowa Capital Investment Corporation and statewide leadership in these issues, he's leading a group that has put together an investor team that brings businesses from out of state to Iowa, pairs them up with young entrepreneurs that want to run them. The purpose of that program is that compared to startups, these are businesses with existing customer bases, existing, product offerings that have been, vetted by the marketplace and are successful. So they're a lot less risky than a traditional startup. But it's building wealth and employment within our region, by adding these businesses. And so that's an effort that I salute and I think is working well for our region. But there's a lot of money for startups, but to Lynn's point, the leadership teams are the biggest challenge. There's money for great companies, not much money for good companies, and the quality of their leadership team often is the difference between that. And Kurt, you've spoken on this issue a lot in your career very effectively. Making sure that they have a fleshed out leadership team where somebody's really strong in marketing, somebody's really strong in finance, somebody's really strong in corporate governance and paying attention to all the details. In addition to customer discovery and the product things that they're
Breaking up, Brian.
They're weak in one of those areas, then that really makes it hard to fund them.
Need better broadband in North.
Finding, plugging those harder than finding the money. Is making sure that they have the right connection. Sorry if I was cutting out there a little bit. I just got to notice that my internet connection.
Yeah, no worries. Any other panelists want to weigh in on any sort of gaps in the Iowa entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Let me just add one piece on the mentoring, because after doing this for as long as we have, I think the thing that people need to be very careful about on the mentoring side is trying to match up the right mentoring talent, because we've seen many highly successful, wealthy people get attached as mentors that know absolutely nothing about starting a company, seed funding a company, building out initial financials, bootstrapping, or even the industry. And yet they get matched up as a mentor because they're a successful business person. And it's a little bit like saying, I'm the most successful podiatrist in the state. I'd be happy to do your open heart surgery. You're going to have dead people, right? I mean, so, you just, I think all the organizations, and when you look at gaps, so you just want to make sure that as you line up mentors, the reason we formed this organization without the mentors was to form something with hands-on people that really had the experience the entrepreneurs needed at the level the entrepreneurs needed. And if you can do that well with an outside mentor person or with your own team, then they move faster. And if you don't, then you can create problems. So.
Yeah, in rural Iowa, we're not resourced the way you are, Kurt. So our 549 mentor network is because we can't staff that expertise on board like you do. And in other rural areas, they don't even have the resources that Iowa Lakes Corridor Development does. The corridor here has committed way more resources to supporting entrepreneurs than most rural regions have available to them. And so, you know, those mentors are just critical, but we have so many of them because we have to make sure that we have the right expertise in the right areas for these folks, because yeah, a wrong plug is terminal.
Yeah, just remember that, you know, we work statewide, Brian. So if you need any of our resources, they're available to you.
Super. Thank you.
And that's a good segue. One of the questions that came up is with all these resources in Iowa, if I'm an early stage startup company, where do I start? And is the ecosystem connected enough that, you know, everyone knows about what everyone is doing so that I'll be able to be directed the right way or to the right resources?
I would say that we're all connected. I would say that at times there's competition for who wants to keep who. But I think for the most part, if you can get yourself into the ecosystem, and then wherever you get in, whatever the entry point is, ask that person about all the other components in the ecosystem, then you can get introduced and woven all the way through, and you can meet them all, and you can decide who you like and who's going to provide you the right help. Because, you know, that's exactly what we do. Is you can work with us, right? Work with whoever in your area. We make a lot of referrals to the SBDCs, especially up here in Cedar Rapids. But I think it exists. I do think there's a little bit of competition from time to time. You know, it's like with us, between us and the Iowa Startup Accelerator and Eric Engelman's program. I mean, there's a lot of competition that goes on there, but not so much with anybody else I see on the panels here.
Fantastic.
But there's a lot of need out there. And so, you know, no wrong door policies are the right policies. And, you know, sometimes Eric might help them. Sometimes you might hurt. I mean, you know, no wrong door. There's a lot of need. Let's focus on getting the need met and a little less on, you know, who's pulling on the rope individually. Let's pull on it together.
I will add that my colleague Mallory and I will have a conversation with just about anybody. And so oftentimes we'll talk with people who have an idea, and that usually means they're premature for the programs that we work with, but we'll direct them to Venture School or the Startup Factory, or, you know, to Ethan, or to EDC. It just kind of depends on what that person's idea is and who we think could best help them. So oftentimes we don't just direct them to one person or one program. We'll kind of open their eyes to the variety of help that exists in the ecosystem. And I think that's, you know, we were just kind of knocking the small state that we're in, but I think one of the benefits to being in a small state is that pretty much everybody is willing to have a conversation with anyone. So I think that's a good thing. It's something that we have going for us, that we're all willing to talk to one another, and most definitely talk to new entrepreneurs.
I might add that it also might be a little bit locationally based too. So if you're in a specific location, you're thinking about, okay, I got to get plugged in somewhere. If you can make it to a community college, to a John Papa John Center, to a chamber, or if you're in Des Moines, you know, somebody like Adrian, then you'll get plugged in, whether it's through something that Kurt and Brian are doing, or whether it's through the SBDC, whether it's through something like what Lynn or Judy are doing. As long as you can get to that community college network, maybe in the rural areas, a Papa John Center, you'll probably get plugged into where you need to go.
Could I ask a question, John?
No.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to connect a couple things that you'd sort of mentioned a few times, Brian. You mentioned very early on Angel Network. You know, you guys are in a part of the state that, particularly for some of the, you know, research-driven companies, isn't often, you know, top of mind, but it is an area of the state where there is quite a bit of wealth, et cetera. Are there sweet spots, if you will, in terms of types of companies, you know, verticals, et cetera, that you guys tend to focus on, or not? I'm just curious about what the networks look for.
Well, the network is structured like this. when an individual joins the network, they lay out what their interest criteria are, and it's really all over the board. Okay, we had a couple join that we want to see a wedding dress store on Grand Avenue in Spencer, Iowa, and we'll throw in 10 grand to help somebody do that, and it subsequently happened and worked out. Others say I want just med tech, so they specify what geographic area do they care about, a particular city, county, part of the state. They don't care, anywhere works. They specify which industries they care about. They specify the size of deal. Some folks don't want to do a deal less than 100 grand. Others, just want to do little deals. Some are open to do 7-figure deals. In some cases, they want to participate with others. In other cases, they don't. And so when a deal comes to us, we feather it out to, we look at the criteria, and then based on what the entrepreneur's proposal is, okay, of all of our investors in the network, which ones match up to the criteria? Those are the ones that are notified of it. And then those investors can do one of three things. They can do nothing, in which they won't hear anything again, or they can raise their hand and say, I'm interested, and you have my permission to tell the other interested. And so those folks will get together. Maybe they make a special purpose LLC. They'll do whatever they do, but there's more eyes on the deal and shared due diligence and all that. It is very often the case that we'll get 2 or 3 that raise their hand and say, "Hi, I'm interested," but nobody knows, and so they make contact with the entrepreneur directly. They say, I'm interested. In some cases, I'm interested in funding your entire deal. So instead of having, a community-based round of investors, they'll just write a check and, one person and it's done, because they don't play well in the sandbox with others. They like to keep their deals private, and they don't want to partner with any other outside investors. They just want to be the investor. And we've had some of those. And so, that's kind of how it's structured, if you will. And so it's very flexible for the investor, to the entrepreneur. They want to go to meetings, they want to go pitch. But this isn't a pitch type structure. There's no persuading involved in any of the deals that we've done. We just sit down at the kitchen table when somebody has raised their hand, and we say, okay, hey, entrepreneur, tell about yourself. Okay, investor, tell about yourself. Either it's a fit or it's not. There's no persuading going on. There's no pitching going on. We're just learning whether or not it's a fit. And that's worked real well for us. It doesn't, that may or may not work for others, but it's been very effective for us.
Thanks. It was a little different, and that's why I thought it might be good to spend just a minute talking about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Great question. Question for Lynn. If you could talk a little bit about venture school related to I-Corps, the connection there.
Sure. Yeah. So the National Science Foundation put together curriculum, going on 10 years ago, probably now, based on the business model canvas to help early stage businesses vet their ideas and build out their business model, rather than focusing on how to write a business plan. It's focusing on how you're going to make money and how you're going to satisfy customer needs. So on campus, we run kind of a traditional, very short 3-week program for faculty and staff who are considering commercializing, for the most part, what they're working on as part of their research at the university. And then around the state, at approximately, 6 or 7 locations a year, we run like the full-on 7-week training program, to, meeting once a week, 3.5 hours a night, to help teams and entrepreneurs get going. We partner with people around the state, like NIAC, and then the community colleges, and then Drake University, UNI, to really make sure we have local mentors and to help us with the local recruiting. So does that answer your question a little bit, or do you have follow-up questions?
It was a question proffered on the chat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if I see any other follow-up, I'll direct that to you. But
sure. Yeah, so we offer 5 locations each semester, and I think we'll be in Des Moines, Iowa City, probably up at UNI. We're a little ahead of our planning cycle for the fall. We'll start sometime in October with a class, probably Davenport as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you. This question is directed to Paul and Ethan, but other panelists can weigh in as well. With the SBDC, you guys provided a good overview of some of the services your centers provide related to business plan development and pitch decks. How much do you offer in the way of financial modeling, pro forma, financial projections? And somewhat related to that, any sort of IP strategy resources?
Well, I guess I'll start out. Yeah, we do a lot of projections for businesses, and some of the resources we use are IBIS World for information, Vertical IQ, and then BizMiner. We have access to BizMiner, which has a lot of information on various industries. And yeah, I mean, many of my referrals come from bankers who require the projections. Right now I've got a couple big 504 loan proposals I'm putting together for a couple businesses. The CDC and the local bank wanted that information. So there's also Reference USA, which has information on competitors, and they kind of approximate what private businesses are doing, though it's not real accurate, I don't think. Does that answer your question, or?
Sure. And Ethan, anything to add there?
Yeah, I might just add that, depending on which SBDC personnel you're working with, we kind of have maybe two different approaches that we would take to financial modeling. So Brian mentioned LivePlan, which is a great software platform that helps develop business planning, but it's a cloud-based model, so you can kind of look at it at the same time. So some directors or some personnel might use LivePlan to help with the financial modeling piece. Others might use their own spreadsheets. So depending on who you're working with, they might have a different strategy, but either way, most SBDC personnel can assist you in some way with financial modeling using the resources that Paul mentioned, from market analysis to develop the assumptions and the justification for what the projections might be. In terms of IP, we're not attorneys, we're not legal professionals, but what we do have access to is a lot of discussions from a lot of entrepreneurs who have gone through maybe similar things. So what we can share is maybe what to prepare for, or what you might encounter in terms of IP development. So for example, if you're developing software, that IP conversation is probably going to be a lot different than creating some type of Combine application. We know that, right? And we can offer that type of advice. We can't give you direct legal advice, but the nice thing is that after we assess your situation regarding your IP, we can maybe direct you to a great resource, whether that's somebody, either directly like a law firm or a variety of law firms you could look at that might be helpful, or somebody even like proof of commercial relevance in that process, because through that process, they can help fund some of those IP development strategies. So just a couple last things there.
Is that question just for the SBDCs?
No, would love to hear from you, Kurt.
Well, we have extensive experience on the IP side. And we have a handful of solid IP attorneys that provide pro bono advice and work. On the IP side, I have numerous patents myself, filed for many. We have a lot of experience on the trademark side. So on the whole intellectual property side, we've got extensive experience. On the financial modeling side, we have our own financial model templates that we've built, and we sit down and we build the financial models hand on hand, hands on, with every one of the entrepreneurs we work with to make sure that they're accounting for all the right things, and we build them on a month, and we make them build them out monthly until cash flow positive, not annually, right? So that they can actually understand month by month by month by month. And then we hold them accountable to budget versus actual going forward. So quite a bit of experience doing both.
I'll also add that the Greater Des Moines Partnership, in conjunction with Brown Winnick, has a seminar series called Raising Capital that they do. I think normally there will be 3 or 4 workshops in the spring and then again in the fall. And it touches on, you know, all of the various things that you need to know when you're deciding to raise capital for your small business. And so it's a financial model, figuring out how to secure your IP. It's something that brings together not only people that are in the ecosystem who are on the financial or legal side who can help you with those particular aspects, but also entrepreneurs who can talk about their experiences and what they did, and you know, maybe what you should do to do things better than, you know, learn from their mistakes.
Yeah, I might mention too that, you know, if you're associated with the universities at Iowa State or Iowa, and it's based on, you know, some of your activity at the university, you're gonna have to deal with the University of Iowa Research Foundation, or I think in the case of Iowa State, it's called ISERF, Iowa State Research Foundation, because you know, all the employees, staff, and faculty at the universities kind of sign off that they need to notify the foundation if it's anything they're developing is based on IP funded through like the National Institute of Health through the university or DOD.
Great. Well, want to thank all the panelists. I'll pass the mic here to Jim Register to give some closing remarks, but really appreciate everyone and thanks for all that you do. We have a great ecosystem here in Iowa, and we're very thankful for everything that your organizations provide entrepreneurs. So Jim, if you want to close it out.
Yeah, just add my thanks to all of the panelists. Back to sort of the question about connections. Hopefully the panel and the way the discussion went helps address that question a bit, just kind of along with the panel session. Also want to thank John for his help, to Judy for kind of stepping up and handling a lot of the logistics. We, as was noted at the beginning, we did record this session. So if anyone would like to access that recording, either to go back, pick something out later, or somebody else on your team that you want to share it with, etc., if you would contact info@iowag2m.org. That's just the general information email address for the accelerator, and Judy just put it up there. We will make sure that you get a link and can access the recording. That's everything. Again, my thanks to everyone for joining, and in particular to the panelists. Have a great day.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.